Hello, everyone. Our team name is Relentless. We as a team decided to speak to all of you today about pregnancy discrimination. But first, I wanted to introduce the team. My name is Julie Panicook.
Hi, I'm Nick Ivoni.
Hi, I'm Ashley Messina.
Hi, I'm Gerby Baines.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Sanchez.
So, like I said, pregnancy discrimination. So, according to EEOC, which is the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, pregnancy discrimination involves treating a woman, an applicant or an employee unfavorably because of pregnancy, childbirth, or a medical condition that's related to pregnancy or childbirth. We as a team, we believe that we should bring an awareness to others about pregnancy discrimination and try our best to stop it. For example, a friend of mine, her name is Paige, and she hid her pregnancy from her coworkers for 6 months because she was afraid she would be treated differently. Well, when she couldn't hide it any longer, she decided to finally announce her pregnancy, and sure enough, they treated her differently. And the company she worked for started looking for someone to take her job. And they wouldn't guarantee her that she could keep her job after maternity leave. These kinds of things don't happen with men. How is a woman supposed to provide for her child when she's being discriminated based off her pregnancy? Pregnancy discrimination is actually more widespread and more common than most of us think. There was a study done out of the UK that was conducted by the Equality and Human Rights Commission. There were phone interviews that took place, and the data that was discovered was that over 3,200 moms with kids between the ages of 2 to 9 years old found that 11% of the mothers in Britain are fired or singled out or treated so badly that they have to quit during the pregnancy or after they go back to work. It also found that 1 in 5 women experience workplace harassment either during their pregnancy or after returning from maternity leave. The researchers were able to estimate that up to 54,000 new mothers in the UK are forced out of their jobs every year. So the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, PDA, states to alleviate the struggles women experience in the workplace that were different than their male counterparts due to pregnancy and pregnancy-related medical issues. The PDA does not protect a pregnant employee from being discharged for being absent from work, even if her absence is due to pregnancy or to complications of her pregnancy, unless the absences of other non-pregnant employees are overlooked. Additionally, the PDA does not require the employer to give preferential treatment to its pregnant employees, so that's an issue. If a woman, think about this, if a woman is pregnant and is about to be a single mother living on her own and her work discriminates against her because she's pregnant, well, what's the mother supposed to do? How will she provide if she can't get a job or obtain a job or keep her job after her pregnancy? All pregnancy discrimination does is just cause more problems. And I'm sure there are many of you out there that have been through this situation before, or at least know of someone out there that have been discriminated against for being pregnant, and it's not easy.
No, it's not easy. You're totally right. And I think that this was a great topic for us as a group to choose because of the fact that we have both men and women in this group. Because, you sit there and you say that it's not easy, and I can agree with you, but, as a man, I can never experience this. So it really puts us men in a position to sit and think about, what kind of discrimination is happening and, what is going to be done about it. So, this was a great topic that really opens the eyes for everyone, but especially men. So one thing that I really looked at a lot was how this topic is dealt with in other countries, especially the UK. And one thing I found was that they bring a lot of light to it in the UK, but even by doing that, they haven't really solved the issue. And by that, I mean, they came up with these different, directives, they're called, in different portions of the Employment Rights Act. So the first one, the Equal Treatment Directive, is all about how treating your employees equally, not just with pregnancy, but with anything. They bring all these to light, and they bring all these things to prevent discrimination from occurring, which is great. Yet we still, a study was found in the UK, as you mentioned, from a UK research that you found, was that in mine, it was 60% of women who became pregnant, not who were hired pregnant, but had become pregnant throughout their work, had still faced some kind of discrimination, whether that be employees, saying certain things about how they look, or that they don't want them around because it's a distraction. All of these fell under that topic. So they have these directives, like the one I said, the Equal Treatment Directive. Another one is the Pregnant Workers Directive. And then there's this one known as the Employment Relations Act, which is the most recent one that they've amended as recent as 1999. And that one is actually included in that Employment Rights Act that I said. So it shows that the UK really, wants to bring a light to this, but it hasn't solved it, which means that, as an entire world, we have these discrimination things, not just pregnancy, but no one has cracked the code on how to solve it. So we try these things, and, the reason I keep saying that we haven't figured out how to do it properly is because the fact that I am a man and can't experience it, that I would want to, help think of a way to do it, but no one can do it quite yet. And for some reason, it feels like it's going to have to be a man who decides it, not because the woman can't. That's not what I'm saying, but it needs to be a man who's going to have to be able to put themselves in those women's shoes who are dealing with that. Now, one thing in that Employment Rights Act that stood out to me was that the UK requires 14 weeks of paid maternity leave to their employees. The US does not have that. There are certain jobs in the US where you are not required to give any paid maternity leave. And that's all well and good in my eyes that, the UK has an idea of, oh, well, you got pregnant throughout work, get ready to have that baby and we'll pay you. But that's great. But what about in-house? What about when you're working still, when you haven't left yet? That doesn't mean that the people are going to stop, discriminating or harassing or whatever they're doing just because they know you're going to be getting paid. That doesn't solve that problem. It just solves a money problem, which is all well and good, but you're still not solving the problem at square one. So, and then one other thing is you can avoid hiring pregnant people, as terrible as it is, you can avoid it and then pin it on something else, but there's no way you're going to be able to stop people from getting pregnant while they're working. It's almost inevitable. So to sit here and tell repeatedly over and over again that the UK and, countries are trying all these different techniques to solve the problem, but haven't done it, sitting here and saying it is one thing, but we need somebody to be able to step up and take care of it. And, each one of us has our own little story to tell about it. And hopefully one day we'll be able to look at everything and link it up and solve it for good. Ashley, you have anything to add?
Yeah, so like Julie covered, pregnancy discrimination charges, according to emeraldinsight.com, are the fastest growing discrimination complaints that are filed with the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And if you think about that, there's so many other discriminations that can be made, and the fact that obviously no discrimination is good discrimination. I'm not saying that at all, but the fact that women are being, on top of being women, being discriminated against for something that we're put on this earth to do is kind of ridiculous in my eyes. In December of 1976, the United States Supreme Court decided that the exclusion of pregnancy from disability benefits plan was not considered gender-based discrimination. And this ruling did not last very long, and it was actually a milestone in the shaping of public policies that were made towards pregnant women. Just 2 years later, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978 overturned the Supreme Court's decision in this. And this act applies to employers who have 15 or more employees and is designed to prohibit discrimination treatment towards pregnant workers, and requires employers to treat disability due to pregnancy the same that they would treat any other disability. Although this act doesn't require employers to provide any extra benefits or privileges to pregnant workers, it does say that they can't hire a woman or not hire a woman simply for the fact that she's pregnant. With this being said, pregnant workers have to be able to do their job and complete their job in order to be able to get this leave. In terms of maternity leave, the employer is required to hold their job open for that pregnant woman so she can't come back and then not have a job. In terms of health insurance, this act states that the employers actually have to hold the same and provide the same level of coverage for the spouses of male employees as they would for female employees. In addition to this act, in 1993, the United States Congress passed the Family and Medical Leave Act. I'm going to refer to it as FMLA a little bit in this. So this act ensures that employees can take leave in order to care for family members that might have incurred a serious health condition. This act applies to employers who have 50 or more employees. And under this act, employers are required to provide up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave for either the birth of a child, the placement of an adopted child or a foster child, to take care of a child, a spouse, a parent, or any family member that may have acquired a serious health condition, and obviously if the employee has acquired a serious health condition. And additionally, this act requires employees or employers to provide health benefits during this time of leave. In September of 2002, California actually passed the California's Fair Employment and Housing Act, and this covers all aspects of discrimination in the workforce and in housing. By enacting this act, actually, California became the first state in the country that took big steps in providing paid leave benefits for pregnant workers. This law provides up to 4 months of unpaid pregnancy leave during the time that the employee is disabled due to their pregnancy. And unlike the California's Family Rights Act, this act doesn't require the employee to work for a certain period of time before they can earn this leave. But in order to receive the benefits given by the FEHA, the employee must be unable to perform their job assignments. In addition, this law also allows employees to request a transfer in their company. So say a woman is pregnant, she's working on a line in, say, a Ford plant. Obviously, that's not the safest conditions for her, so she can ask and request to be transferred to a safer and less strenuous job for her for that time being up until her leave. In order for this to occur, the employee has to be both qualified for the position, and once she returns, she has to be reinstated to her original position. She can't keep that same position. In terms of employee responsibility under this act, the employee is responsible for informing their employer up to 30 days in advance before they plan on taking the leave. If 30 days isn't possible, they have to let their employer know as soon as possible. Once the employee desires to return to their job, the employer has to reinstate them within 2 business days of their notice. Under this act, employers are guaranteed or have to guarantee the same position to their employees. They can't come back and not have a job for them. But if that does happen, the employer has to give them a job that is the same in terms of pay, job content, and promotional opportunities. In addition to the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act, 11 states have passed similar laws in order to protect women who become pregnant. These states include California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Maine, Minnesota, New Jersey, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and Wisconsin. So how can we as a society prevent pregnancy discrimination? Well, women are obviously, there's a lot of us. So we actually make up 50% of the US workforce. So we can't alienate women. We can't make them feel like they have to hide their pregnancy, like Julie mentioned. Like just because they think, oh, hey, if I show that I'm pregnant, I'm going to lose my job. So we as a society need to recognize that women are different in their needs, obviously, other than men during pregnancy. And like Nick talked about, he's a man, he's never going to experience what it's like to be pregnant. No man ever will. So we need to respect the fact that women are going to need other accommodations during that time. The best way we can do this is to have employers treat pregnant women fairly during this time. They should make sincere efforts in order to comply with the law and different policies and not make it as obvious if they're getting rid of a woman because she is pregnant. They can't just make that as an excuse as to a reason to get rid of her. And I think I read up on this. I think a really good idea is to educate our youth on how pregnancy discrimination isn't right. By doing this, we can inform young kids that, hey, just because she's pregnant doesn't mean she can't work and fulfill her job. In some cases, that might be the case. But by informing our youth, by the time they grow up, they're not, and they become a boss and they sit down with a pregnant woman, they're not going to be like, oh, I can't hire this woman because she's pregnant. She's not going to be able to do her job. So in doing this, it will decrease pregnancy stereotypes. And organizations should be flexible when it comes to pregnancy needs. And ideally, in an ideal situation, both the employer and the employee need to find a practical and creative way to prevent pregnancy discrimination.
So, although there are laws to protect women from pregnancy discrimination, how effective are these laws? Well, according to this figure from Sage Journals written by Reginald A. Bryan and Vincent J., 40% of cases filed by women relate in some way to pregnancy. So right here it shows that the case study consists of 177 different women. Here it shows the percentage that were fired due to pregnancy-related things and non-pregnancy. It also shows different variables such as the percentage that were white, the average age, and so on. So a great example showing how large corporate companies are still able to find loopholes is the UPS case. Young, who is a UPS driver, became pregnant after 4 years with the company. Young's doctor instructed her not to lift anything more than 20 pounds, but she still needed the money, so she requested to return to her job on light duty. But her manager then said to her that the company only offered light duty for workers who sustained injury during while they were working, or if they fell under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and also if you suffer from anything such as sleep apnea. So Young was not allowed to return to her former role and was required to go to an extended unpaid leave, during which time she lost all of her medical coverage. Young eventually filed a lawsuit against the company but lost in district court and appeals court. The case eventually made its way all the way to the Supreme Court, which ruled 6-3 in her favor. While the case was ongoing, UPS did change their policy to allow pregnant workers to do temporary light duty. And this should be done everywhere, since pregnant women, you have to accommodate to their needs, since if they lift more than 20 pounds per se, they can cause serious damage to their child. So the next case I'm going to discuss is especially interesting because it has the questions, what happens if there are complications or problems with the pregnancy? Or does the employer need to reasonably accommodate its pregnant employees for these complications? Well, Andrea Mosby's case against the public company Memphis Light, Gas, and Water Division asks these questions. Andrea worked as an attorney for MLGWD, and after 7 years with the company, she became pregnant. Unfortunately, she suffered from a condition where her cervix shortened, thus putting herself at risk and her baby. But the good news was that the condition was treatable, but she would need to have immediate surgery and stay bed rest for the rest of her pregnancy. But Andrea still wanted to continue to telecommunicate or to work from home, so she notified her boss. Her request was denied even though she could telecommunicate during the hospital stay. She then returned to work after giving birth and was surprised upon returning when she received a poor performance review. She had been given a negative performance review that she claimed was unfair because it contained information that was not brought to her attention and also contained falsified information. Andrea then sued the company because the company discriminated against her because of her pregnancy complication and retaliated against her when she returned from maternity leave. The case made its way all the way to the jury, to a jury trial in which she won, but she didn't win 100% of the case. And this is because she lost the retaliation terms under the Tennessee Human Rights Act, but won under Americans with Disabilities Act. And the reason for this is because the ADA actually has in their terms that the company should have properly accommodated Andrea, but chose not to.
Women shouldn't be afraid to file complaints on discrimination. But what about if you are experiencing discrimination during an interview? The law that protects women is Title VII, Pregnancy Discrimination During an Interview. Pregnancy discrimination can happen during an interview. Women have to be aware of the rights because they need to know if a business is asking illegal questions. For example, some of the questions that a company cannot ask you are you planning to have children? Are you currently pregnant? Or do you have children? If a woman is pregnant, it is her decision to let a potential employer know of her pregnancy, any personal information regarding if they have children or if they're planning to have children. That is their personal decision as well, to let the company know if they are planning to have children. If a woman does decide to tell the company that they are pregnant, a potential employer cannot deny you the job opportunity. So what about if you're in a job or you're trying to apply for a company and you want to know about pregnancy leave? Women have the right to pregnancy leave. During pregnancy leave, employers have to hold your job place, and women have up to 12 weeks of pregnancy leave. Women get paid pregnancy leave if employers pay benefits on disabilities. If they do, they are also required to pay pregnancy leave, and this also includes mothers who end up with disabilities after having their baby. Health insurance that is provided by your employer also has to include to pay any pregnancy medical cost. If a woman after pregnancy needs any type of accommodation, they need to let the employers know. The best way to let your employers know that you need any type of accommodation is through writing and keeping a copy. The reason why is because if they deny you those accommodations, that is discrimination, and you have that in record. So you can file a complaint saying that my company denied me the accommodations that I needed, and you'll file your complaint. If a woman is and you can file a complaint if you're just receiving any type of discriminations. There are places where you can go to file a complaint. You just have to find a local place around where you live. In every state, in every city, there should be some type of center where you can go and file a complaint. For example, I looked up in Detroit. In Detroit, one of the places is. You can also go in on a website called Workplace Fairness, and you can look up the state and the city where you live in, and it can also show you a place where you can go and file a complaint. Complaints do have to be investigated, and there's two agencies that actually do this investigation. One of the companies is Equal Employment Opportunities Community and the Department of Labor, so they do have to get involved. They have to investigate the discrimination, and if you have any information copies that you can provide, that's the best way, so you have some type of record. I got all of my information from the Workplace Fairness. It's everyone's job. This is a great website to get informed of any type of discriminations that women are receiving who are currently mothers or are expecting to have a baby. Overall, pregnancy discrimination is it's not just widespread in America, it's also in the UK. We should not take for granted having a job. If you are a victim of pregnancy discrimination, don't be afraid to speak up and fight for your rights, or file a complaint on anything, and don't be afraid to share your story, because if a woman is currently pregnant and they're afraid of filing a complaint, hearing someone else's story helps them be brave enough and file a complaint or one where they can get any type of help. Thank you everyone for listening to our speech.